She's your sister Emily. You owe her. Family comes first. That's what they told me the night she threw my $4,000 laptop into the pool while they stood there siding with her like my life's work was just a toy she'd broken. But what happens when the golden child doesn't just ruin your things, she tries to steal your identity, your money, even your name? I found out the hard way, and it nearly destroyed me. Like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't yet, and let's begin. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 28 years old, and if you ask anyone in my family who the responsible one is, they'll point to me. That sounds flattering on the surface, but in reality, it's more of a convenient label. They slap on me so they can justify leaning on me whenever things go wrong, while at the same time using it as an excuse to ignore me whenever things go right. I stopped expecting help from anyone the day I turned 18. College tuition, rent, food, the endless stream of bills, every dollar came from my own effort. I worked nights tutoring math mornings, answering phones at a call center, and still managed to grind through an IT degree. Those years were brutal, but they gave me something my family never could: freedom. By the time I graduated, I had a modest savings account, a clear career path in IT consulting, and the knowledge that I didn't owe a soul a single cent. Now, my life is steady. I rent a small but modern apartment downtown filled with things I bought myself. My couch, my TV, the computer workstation that takes up most of my living room. It isn't luxurious, but it's mine. Every square inch of it is a reminder that I built this life without handouts. That independence isn't just financial, it's emotional. When my phone buzzes with family drama, I can silence it, set it down, and know my life won't collapse because of their chaos. That's my safe zone, and I've fought hard to keep it intact. Of course, then there's Madison, my younger sister. She's 25 but acts like she's perpetually stuck at 15. Where I spent my early 20s eating ramen and skipping nights out so I could pay tuition. Madison spent hers on shopping sprees, weekend getaways, and a rotating lineup of gadgets she never paid for. iPhones, luxury sneakers, handbags worth more than my rent if it's flashy. Madison has it. And when people ask her how she affords it, she gives this little shrug and says, "I've got connections." The truth is, her connections are just my parents' bank accounts. My parents, Robert and Diane Carter, are the classic middle-class suburban couple. Dad worked a steady job at an auto parts distributor, Mom kept the house running, and together they embodied that old American mantra, family loyalty above all else. Growing up, they drilled into us that family was sacred, that we'd be nothing without each other. But somewhere along the way, those rules shifted. Madison became the baby who could do no wrong, while I became the cold, distant one who didn't need anything. When Madison maxed out her credit card, they bailed her out. When she quit yet another job because the boss was toxic, they praised her for knowing her worth. And when I quietly graduated college with honors, working 2 jobs to cover tuition, they sent a congratulatory text. No party, no gift, no fuss. Emily doesn't like attention, they'd say, as if that excused the indifference. I don't hate my parents. I just stopped expecting them to see me clearly. To them, I'm a machine, functional, reliable, always fine on my own. And in some ways, I played into it. I rarely asked for help. I didn't complain when Madison got the bigger bedroom growing up, or when she got a new car for her high school graduation, while I drove a used beater I bought myself. But those little slights built up into something heavier, a truth I carried quietly. Family loyalty only seemed to matter when it benefited Madison. That favoritism has shaped every holiday, every birthday, every Sunday dinner. Madison always arrives late, dramatic, flustered with some story about how the world wronged her. My parents hang on every word, shaking their heads at how unfair life is to their youngest. Meanwhile, I'm the one clearing plates, fixing Mom's printer, making sure Dad's Wi-Fi isn't lagging. I'm useful, not cherished. And when the conversation turns to me, my career, my apartment, the projects I'm working on, it lasts about 90 seconds before someone interrupts with, "Oh, Mads, didn't you say you had something exciting to share?" It used to sting more than it does now. These days, I tell myself it doesn't matter because I have something Madison doesn't: stability. She may have the spotlight, but I have peace. Or at least I thought I did. The thing about being the responsible one is that it comes with expectations. Madison knows it. My parents know it. And whenever their safety net wears thin, they turn to me confident that I'll step in. Usually it's small things. Can you cover Madison's phone bill this month, or could you loan her a couple hundred until payday? I've learned to say no, but that doesn't stop them from asking. Still, nothing prepared me for the phone call that came on an ordinary Wednesday afternoon. I was in the middle of a client meeting reviewing network security protocols when my phone lit up with Madison's name. I let it ring out once, twice, but she called again and again until I excused myself and answered in the hallway. Her voice was casual, like she was asking me to pick up milk on the way home. "Hey, Em, so I need 20 grand. I laughed before I could stop myself. "What?" $20,000, she repeated slower this time, like I was the one who didn't understand. "I've got this business opportunity with a friend. It's gonna blow up, but I need seed money." For a second, I honestly thought it was a joke. This was the same girl who once tried to sell designer sunglasses out of the trunk of her car after swearing it was the next big thing. "You're serious?" I asked. "Dead serious," she said. "It's a once-in-a-lifetime chance, Em. Family helps family, right?" The word family hung heavy between us, sharp and loaded, a reminder of every guilt trip I'd ever endured. And in that instant, standing alone in the hallway with my phone pressed to my ear, I realized this wasn't just another favor. This was the beginning of something bigger, something I didn't see coming yet, but I could feel it in my gut. The moment Madison asked for $20,000, I didn't hesitate. I told her no. Not gently, not with excuses, just no. Her pause on the other end was sharp, dangerous. Then came the sigh, the practiced one I'd heard 100 times before, designed to sound wounded. "Wow, Emily, you're really gonna do me like that? You're family. Don't you care about me?" That line, the guilt trip, had always been her fallback. In the past, it was followed by my parents calling, telling me to be the bigger person or help just this once. But I didn't waver this time. "Madison, I'm not giving you 20 grand for another one of your half-baked schemes. End of story." And before she could fire back, I hung up. For the next few hours, I tried to put it out of my mind, but sure enough, by evening, my phone rang again. "Mom." She didn't even bother with a greeting. "Emily, your sister told me you refused to help her. She's trying to better her life and you can't even support her." "She's your sister," my jaw tightened. "Mom, she's not trying to better her life. She's trying to drain me. I'm not funding her little get-rich-quick fantasies." Her sigh was theatrical, almost rehearsed. "You've always been so selfish. You'd rather watch her struggle than lend a hand." That word selfish hit me like a slap. Me selfish. After all the nights I went without sleep, all the years I scraped by on my own, while Madison burned through their money. Without consequence, I swallowed the fury rising in my throat and said only, "Good night, Mom," before hanging up. The next day, I decided to stop by my parents' house after work. I didn't want to, but I'd left some documents in Dad's study when I was helping him set up a new printer the week before. It should have been a quick in and out. As I walked in through the side door, the first thing I heard was the blaring sound of the TV. Madison was sprawled across the living room couch like a queen, a blanket draped over her legs, a soda balanced on her stomach, scrolling her phone while some reality show screamed in the background. She didn't even glance at me. "Nice to see you too," I muttered under my breath, heading straight for the study. I grabbed my folder, checked that the papers were all there, and was about to leave when it hit me. I'd left my work laptop here too. That laptop wasn't just a machine. It was my livelihood. Years of client data contracts, personal files, everything I'd built professionally lived in that sleek black case. I'd customized it with upgraded hardware and encrypted storage, a setup worth more than some cars. Without it, I couldn't do my job. I found it plugged in, charging in the guest room. I unplugged the cord, slid it into its case, and turned toward the door. That's when Madison appeared, leaning against the doorway with that smug little smirk I'd come to hate. "Still not gonna help me out?" she asked, her voice dripping with fake innocence. I didn't even look up. Nope. I wish I could say what happened next was an accident. But it wasn't. Madison stepped into the room, walked right past me, and without a word grabbed the laptop out of my hands. I froze stunned, watching her grip it by the edge with one hand like it was a toy. Madison, don't. Her smirk widened. Guess you should have thought about that before. Before I could move, she strolled to the backyard patio, swung the sliding door open, and in one smooth motion dropped my laptop straight into the pool. The splash was deafening. My stomach dropped with it, a heavy stone of disbelief and rage sinking into icy water. I ran outside, my voice breaking into a scream. Are you insane? Do you have any idea what you just did? She shrugged, her tone casual, almost bored. Oh, sorry. Guess my hand slipped. The calmness in her voice was gasoline on the fire. I wanted to scream until the neighbors came running, but just then my parents rushed outside, alarmed by the noise. What's going on out here? Dad demanded. Madison was faster. She threw her hands up, all wide-eyed innocence. It was an accident, I didn't mean to. She just freaked out. I held up the dripping, ruined laptop, water streaming down my arms, and glared at my parents. She just destroyed my computer. All my work, everything I own gone. Dad frowned, but not at Madison. At me. Emily, calm down. It's just an accident. It's only a laptop. Only a laptop. Those words stabbed deeper than I expected. That machine was worth more than Madison's car, but it wasn't just about the price tag. It held my career, my future, the trust of every client I'd ever worked for. And my parents dismissed it like it was nothing. I stared at them dripping water onto the patio tiles, feeling something break inside me. My parents didn't ask if it could be saved. They didn't ask how much damage it would cause. They didn't even scold Madison. Mom just rolled her eyes and muttered, "Boys will be boys," as if Madison's cruelty was just some harmless prank. And Madison, she chuckled. She actually laughed, glancing at me with a gleam of victory. Guess you should have helped me when you had the chance. I wanted to explode, to scream, to curse, to grab her by the shoulders and shake her until that smug grin disappeared. But something stopped me. A realization sharp and clear anger would only feed them. Instead, I forced myself to go quiet. I set the ruined laptop down on the patio table, wiped my wet hands on my jeans, and straightened up. Then I smiled. Not a warm smile, not a forgiving one. A tight, cold smile that said, "You have no idea what you just started." For the first time that day, Madison's smirk faltered. Without a word, I grabbed my car keys, walked through the house, and left. The night after Madison drowned my laptop, I sat on my couch in the dark with the useless machine propped on the coffee table like a corpse. Water still dripped from its edges onto the towel I'd wrapped it in, each drop echoing in the silence of my apartment. That laptop had been my lifeline. Client contracts, project files, years of carefully crafted work, all gone in seconds because my sister wanted to prove a point. I felt gutted, like someone had broken into my home and violated me. Worse than the financial blow was the indifference of my parents. Their words replayed in my head over and over. It's only a laptop. I had dedicated my adult life to building something from nothing, and in their eyes it meant less than Madison's hurt feelings. For the next day or two, I tried to hold it together. I set up my old backup machine, pieced together what files I could from cloud storage, and emailed clients with vague excuses about technical difficulties. But then the phone calls started. First, it was my bank. Fraud alert. Someone had attempted a $9,500 wire transfer from my personal checking account. My stomach sank as the representative read the name on the receiving account, Madison Carter. I froze. For a second, I couldn't even process the words. It was one thing for her to destroy my property out of spite, but stealing nearly $10,000 from me. I scrambled into action, heart pounding. I had the bank freeze my accounts, shut down my cards, and initiate fraud reports. While combing through my account notifications, I found something else. A credit card company had sent me a confirmation that an additional authorized user had been added to my account. The name, Madison Carter. My hands shook as I stared at the email. She hadn't just tried to take money once. She was trying to graft herself permanently onto my finances. It clicked all at once, the laptop. I'd had some passwords saved locally despite my usual caution. Even waterlogged, a determined person with access to the right people could salvage pieces of data. Madison wasn't clever enough to do that on her own, but she had plenty of shady friends. By the time I finished locking everything down, I was trembling with rage. I knew what I had to do. That evening, I drove to my parents' house and confronted them head-on. I brought the bank records and the credit card notice, shoving the papers across their kitchen table. "Look at this," I said, voice shaking. "She's not just freeloading anymore. She's trying to steal from me. Nearly $10,000. And she added herself to my credit card account without my consent. This isn't petty, it's fraud." Dad scanned the papers briefly before leaning back with a frown, but not at Madison. At me. "Emily, don't make this bigger than it is." I blinked. Bigger than it is? She tried to take almost 10 grand, Mom's arms folded tightly across her chest. "She's desperate. She wouldn't have done it if you hadn't pushed her away. You're twisting it to make her look bad, but we know what you're doing. You're manipulating the situation." My breath caught. Manipulating? The bank literally put her name on the wire transfer. Do you think I faked that? Do you think I'd risk my entire financial reputation to frame my own sister? But they wouldn't budge. Mom shook her head, eyes full of disappointment, as if I were the one who'd crossed a line. "You've always had a cold heart, Emily. Not everyone is as strong as you. Madison just needs a little support." Support. That word stung. They weren't talking about love or guidance. They meant money. My money. I left before the fury boiling inside me spilled out into words I couldn't take back. I thought maybe the rest of the family would see reason. I was wrong. That night, my phone buzzed with notifications from the extended family group chat. Madison had beaten me there, posting her version of the story. "Emily's freezing me out because she thinks I stole from her. She's locking me out of family accounts and making things up to make me look bad. I didn't mean to break her computer, it was an accident. Now she's acting like I'm some kind of criminal." And just like that, the pitchforks came out. "Not surprised," one aunt typed. "Emily's always been so selfish." "Money changes people," another cousin chimed in. "She thinks she's better than everyone." "Madison doesn't deserve this," an uncle added. "Family should stick together." Message after message rolled in, each one twisting the knife deeper. Not a single person asked for my side of the story. They didn't care about proof. In their eyes, I was the villain, the cold, heartless sister throwing her own flesh and blood to the wolves over a misunderstanding. I stared at the screen until the words blurred together, my chest tightening like a vice. For years, I'd tolerated being overlooked, shouldering responsibility while Madison got a free pass. But now they were calling me manipulative, selfish, cruel. And Madison. She was reveling in it, basking in the role of victim while the family lined up to defend her. It hit me in one clean, brutal moment. This wasn't just Madison versus me. This was the whole family. A system that had always enabled her was now weaponized against me. No matter what proof I had, they would never see her clearly. Not until it was too late. I closed the group chat, set my phone face down on the table, and sat in silence. My apartment was dark except for the glow of the streetlights filtering through the blinds. My reflection in the black screen of my phone looked like a stranger, tired, furious, betrayed. I took a long breath, the kind that steadied me in ways words never could. Then, in the quiet, I whispered to myself, "Fine. If they want a villain, I'll give them one." The morning after I told myself I'd be the villain if they wanted one, I started small. Madison had always leached off the accounts I paid for Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu, Apple Music, even Xbox Live. My monthly bills were basically a buffet for her entertainment. So before sunrise, I logged into every single one and changed the passwords. It was a quiet, almost surgical act of rebellion. No big confrontation, no shouting match. Just locked doors in places she thought were hers to walk through. By 6 a.m., my phone was buzzing. Madison. Her voice was tight with confusion. My Netflix isn't working. Did you change the password? I smiled into my coffee. Yeah, Madison. Along with everything else. You don't pay for them, so you don't get to use them anymore. She went silent for a beat, then spat out, "Wow." Petty much, and hung up. That was only round 1. By 9, my mom was calling, her voice sharp with accusation. "Emily, what are you doing? Your sister just told me you locked her out of all the accounts. That's not how family behaves." I kept my tone even. She doesn't pay for them. She doesn't get to use them. Simple. You don't turn your back on family, Mom snapped. I almost laughed. They'd been turning their backs on me for years, but instead of arguing, I bit my tongue. I'd learned something valuable: silence is more powerful than shouting. So I let her rant until she ran out of steam. Then I said, "Okay," and hung up. The quiet wasn't surrender. It was strategy. With Madison locked out, I turned my attention to rebuilding. I walked into the electronics store that weekend and bought the machine I'd always wanted, but never let myself splurge on a top-tier workstation custom-built high-end everything. I doubled my digital security encrypted backups and signed up for professional-grade cloud storage that could withstand anything short of nuclear war. The weight that lifted off my shoulders was almost physical. My ruined laptop had been a loss, yes, but it gave me the excuse to upgrade my entire system. The timing couldn't have been better. Just a week later, I landed a contract with a major tech firm overseas. The retainer check alone was enough to cover my new setup twice over. I threw myself into the work, and suddenly, my career wasn't just recovering, it was soaring. Long hours didn't feel like punishment anymore. They felt like fuel. I found myself saying yes to projects I'd once turned down. I started networking more, even joined a podcast to talk about IT consulting. My name was circulating in circles Madison couldn't dream of reaching. The irony wasn't lost on me. She'd tried to sabotage me, and all she'd done was light a fire under me. Meanwhile, Madison was running her mouth. Word got back to me through acquaintances. She was bragging to her friends about how she'd broken me, that I was a control freak obsessed with work, so easy to push over the edge. She even boasted that she had the whole family believing her version of events. To her, I was a villain in some tragicomic play she'd written, and she was the star. It stung, but I let her have the spotlight. I didn't post online, didn't defend myself, didn't fight. I stayed quiet, and that silence unnerved her in ways she didn't expect. Then, out of nowhere, I got a message from a number I didn't recognize. It was a girl named Sarah, one of Madison's so-called friends. We'd met once or twice at family cookouts, but we weren't close. Her message was blunt. "I don't like how your sister talks about you. You should see this." Attached were screenshots. There was Madison in a group chat laughing about how she'd taught Emily a lesson, calling me uptight, robotic, pathetic. "She thinks she's better than everyone, but I knocked her down a peg," Madison had typed, followed by a string of laughing emojis. My hands tightened around the phone. I scrolled further screenshots of her bragging that she could twist Mom and Dad around her finger, that she'd never face consequences because Emily always folds. Sarah's final text read, "She isn't your sister. She's your enemy. Be careful." I sat back staring at those words. Enemy. It sounded dramatic, but she was right. Madison wasn't just careless. She was calculated. She wanted to humiliate me, strip away what I'd built, and keep everyone convinced I was the monster. For the first time, I stopped asking myself why my family sided with her. It didn't matter. What mattered was that Madison had declared war, and I wasn't going to lose. 2 weeks later, as I was wrapping up a call with an overseas client, I got a different kind of message. This time from a family friend, Mr. Carson, who worked in finance and had known my parents for years. "Emily." His email read, "I thought you should be aware your sister and her business partner approached our firm for funding. What concerns me is that she listed you as a silent backer. Attached is a copy of the proposal." My chest tightened as I opened the document. There it was in black and white, Madison Carter's shiny little pitch for some vague lifestyle brand that promised guaranteed returns. And under the financial backing section, my name. Emily Carter, IT consultant. complete with my LinkedIn profile hyperlinked for credibility. She was using my reputation, my hard-earned career as collateral for her scam. Without my knowledge, without my consent. I sat there, frozen, my heart pounding in my ears. Madison thought she'd beaten me already. She thought she could steal my money, my name, even my identity, and I'd just keep playing the role of the cold, selfish villain. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused, and Madison had just handed me the perfect weapon. The proposal Mr. Carson sent me sat open on my laptop for hours. Every time I thought I'd seen the worst of it, another detail hit me like a gut punch. Madison hadn't just dropped my name casually, she'd built her entire credibility on my back. My LinkedIn profile was linked under professional backing, and she'd even listed Emily Carter, IT consultant, as a silent investor. It was bold, sloppy, and deeply illegal. My name, my work, my reputation. It was all being paraded in front of potential investors without my knowledge. If her scheme blew up, my credibility could go with it. That night, I opened a new folder on my computer and titled it simply, Madison, Evidence. The first file I dropped in was the PDF of the fraudulent proposal. Then I started stacking the deck. Screenshots Sarah had sent me of Madison bragging about destroying my laptop and manipulating the family group chat. The bank records of the $9,500 attempted wire transfer with her name stamped on it. The email from the credit card company confirming her as an unauthorized user. One by one, I collected each piece of proof like puzzle pieces. On their own, they painted her as reckless. Together, they showed her for what she really was, a thief, a liar, and a fraud. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of calm. Not peace exactly, something colder. Clarity. Madison thought she was playing a game of lies and favoritism, but games like that only work when there's no paper trail. And Madison had left hers scattered everywhere. The next step was making sure I wasn't just hoarding receipts. I called in a favor from an old college friend, Rachel, now a lawyer in corporate litigation. Over coffee, I slid the proposal across the table. She read it silently, her brow furrowing. "This is serious," she said at last. "Using your name and credentials in a financial proposal without your consent. That's identity fraud. It's misrepresentation. If any investor lost money because they thought you were involved, you could hold her personally liable." The words made my stomach twist, not with fear, but with something that felt dangerously close to satisfaction. "So I have leverage." Rachel nodded. "You have more than leverage. You have grounds for a cease and desist, possibly even civil action if you want to go there." I leaned back in my chair, feeling a slow, deliberate calm settle in my chest. Madison thought she'd outsmarted me, but she'd just handed me the legal equivalent of a loaded gun. Still, I wasn't reckless like her. I didn't want a messy public showdown, at least not yet. What I wanted was precision, a slow erosion of her safety nets until she was standing on nothing but her own arrogance. So I started small, subtle. Planting seeds. Whenever I bumped into acquaintances, relatives, or family friends, I slipped Madison's business into casual conversation. Not accusations, not warnings, just soft nudges. I heard Madison's working on something big, I'd say, with a neutral smile. Hope it's legit this time. The words did the work for me. People remembered her failed ventures, the sunglasses out of the trunk, the half-finished Etsy shop, the endless schemes that fizzled after a few weeks. I didn't need to say more. Doubt is more contagious than truth. Meanwhile, I started building quiet alliances outside the family. A cousin who had once been burned by Madison borrowing money she never paid back. An aunt who privately admitted she thought Madison was a little too coddled. Even a few old neighbors who'd rolled their eyes at Madison's antics over the years. I didn't badmouth her, I didn't have to. I just listened, nodded, and filed away their words. It was like constructing a scaffolding. Piece by piece, I was creating a network of people who might not say anything yet, but who would remember my silence when the truth came crashing down. When Madison's empire of lies toppled, I wanted the whispers to spread not because of me, but because of her own history catching up with her. At night, after finishing work on my booming new contracts, I'd sit at my desk and add to the evidence folder. Every screenshot, every email, every record. I organized them by category, labeled them meticulously like a case file. Because that's what it was. A case. Not necessarily for court, but for the court of public opinion. The family had branded me the villain. That was fine. I'd let them think that. But when the curtain fell, when the lights came up and Madison stood exposed with nothing but her arrogance to protect her, I wanted them to feel the weight of their own blindness. The beauty of it all was that I didn't have to do anything dramatic. I just had to shine a light. By the end of the month, I was ready. I sat at my desk staring at a fresh Word document. The heading glared at me in bold cease and desist. Rachel had given me the template. I filled in the details myself: unauthorized use of my name, professional reputation and credentials in financial documents, misrepresentation to potential investors, identity fraud, a formal demand to remove my name from any current or future materials. As I typed, I could almost hear Madison's laugh, that smug, grating sound she made whenever she thought she'd won. But the thing about laughter is that it dies fast when faced with consequences. I finished the letter, saved it as a PDF, and sat back in my chair. The document glowed on my screen like a loaded weapon, sharp and undeniable. My hands rested lightly on the keyboard as I whispered to myself, "It's time." And with one keystroke, I hit save, ready to send. The next morning, I woke up with the kind of clarity I hadn't felt in months. The cease and desist letter was ready. All that remained was to hit send. I stared at my inbox for a long moment, breathing in slowly, steadying myself. Then I attached the PDF, typed Madison's email address, added her business partners, and just for good measure, CC'd my parents. Subject line: unauthorized use of identity, formal notice. I hovered for half a second, then pressed send. The silence that followed was deafening. Hours passed, then a full day. Madison didn't call. My parents didn't text. Not even a dramatic voicemail. Nothing. It was the kind of silence that isn't peace, but pressure the moment before a storm breaks. But I wasn't waiting idly. My next move was sharper. I drafted an email to every investor Madison had approached, attaching the proposal with my name plastered across it. My message was brief and professional. I want to clarify that I have no involvement in this venture, nor do I endorse it in any way. Please remove my name from any materials you may have received. Clean, precise, bulletproof. I hit send to a dozen addresses. And then I waited. Within 48 hours, the ripple effects began. Investors started ghosting Madison. One politely replied to me, thanking me for the clarification and hinting that Madison's pitch had seemed optimistic at best. By the end of the week, word had trickled back through mutual acquaintances her business partner had dropped her completely. Apparently, he wasn't interested in a venture tainted by fraud charges. For the first time in her life, Madison's charm hadn't saved her. Money had fled. Partners had fled. And all I'd done was tell the truth. But the best was still coming. I compiled everything: the bank's fraud alert with her name on it, the unauthorized credit card authorization screenshots of her bragging, and the cease and desist letter she'd received. I bundled it into one neat, secure PDF and titled it simply, "For Your Records." The email to my parents was short, almost cold. "I thought you should see the full story. No response necessary." I sent it and closed my laptop, heart thundering. That night, I lay awake wondering if they'd even read it. A part of me braced for the usual excuses: denial, the reflexive defense of their golden child. But this time was different. 2 days later, I got my answer. My aunt, one of the same people who had mocked me in the group chat, called out of the blue. Her voice was cautious, almost hushed. "Emily, I just wanted to say, I saw what you sent your parents. Things must be hard over there. Hang in there." Something in her tone told me the shift had already begun. Later that evening, another call came. This one from my cousin. Whatever you sent your dad. He's not taking it well. He's been quiet all day, going through papers at the kitchen table." I pictured him sitting there, glasses on, scanning each line of the PDF. The bank records with Madison's name, the credit card form in her handwriting, the messages where she gloated about ruining my laptop. For once, there was no way to spin it. No accident, no she's desperate, no scapegoating me as the cold one. And then came the final crack in the golden child's armor. A neighbor of my parents, someone who'd always kept a finger on the family gossip, texted me, "You should know Madison's moving out. Heard your dad told her no more handouts, no more excuses." I didn't reply. I just sat there, phone in hand, pulse steady, letting the words sink in. Madison, the girl who'd been cushioned from every mistake, the sister who'd never faced a single consequence, had finally run out of safety nets. I imagined her walking into the living room, maybe still trying her old lines. "It wasn't me. Emily set me up. You don't understand." But this time there was no rescue. This time the evidence was ironclad, undeniable. And for the first time, my parents hadn't defended her. They'd cut her off. The golden child had fallen. When my phone buzzed later that night, I didn't bother checking the messages. I knew who it was. Madison, frantic. Maybe angry, maybe begging, maybe both. I could practically hear her voice in my head, sharp with blame, dripping with entitlement. I set the phone down untouched and walked into my kitchen, poured myself a glass of water. The silence of my apartment felt different now, not heavy but clean, like air after a storm. The phone buzzed again. Then again. A stream of notifications lit up the screen, relentless. I let it sit face down on the counter until the buzzing stopped. Then I picked it up, opened my settings, and powered the phone off completely. As the screen went black, I caught my own faint reflection in it. Tired eyes, yes, but a steady smile pulling at the corners of my mouth. Not triumphant, not gloating, just calm. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like the villain. And I didn't need to. It didn't take long for the truth to spread. Families love gossip, and mine was no exception. The same aunts and cousins who had once gleefully piled on in the group chat suddenly went silent. No more messages calling me selfish or manipulative. No more mocking replies about how money changes people. Just a quiet, uncomfortable absence. At first I thought maybe I'd been muted, cut out of the chat altogether. But when my phone pinged late one night with a stray notification, I saw the difference. Where once relatives had rallied behind Madison, the thread was eerily empty. No one defended her now. No one commented on her big project anymore. It was as though she'd been erased from the conversation. Even family loyalty has limits. From what I heard, Madison tried to salvage her story at first. She told anyone who would listen that I'd set her up, exaggerated, twisted everything to make her look bad. But the problem with being a compulsive liar is that people eventually start remembering the other lies you told them. Relatives she had borrowed money from and never paid back suddenly remembered. Old friends recalled times she had left them hanging. Her pattern was too obvious now, and the evidence I'd laid bare was undeniable. One by one, people stopped answering her calls. It wasn't just family either. Investors who had once tolerated her slick words wouldn't take her meetings. Her business partner had abandoned her completely. Even her so-called friends started pulling away. The same girls who used to show up at bars with her giggling over free drinks weren't posting photos with her anymore. And when she did appear, she looked different. I heard it first from a neighbor who still saw my parents now and then. Ran into Madison at the grocery store, she told me in a hushed voice. She wasn't herself. No makeup. Old hoodie. Looked like she hadn't slept in days. Part of me almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the sound of my laptop splashing into the pool. The smirk on her face when she told me, "Guess you should have helped me when you had the chance." No, I didn't feel sorry. Meanwhile, my life moved in the opposite direction. With my new workstation and airtight security, my consulting business thrived. The overseas contract blossomed into a long-term relationship, opening doors I hadn't even known existed. Word of mouth spread fast in the IT world, and soon I was juggling offers that would have been unthinkable a year before. I was invited to guest speak at a cybersecurity conference in Chicago, then another in Boston. I found myself recording a podcast interview about resilience in tech careers, the irony of which wasn't lost on me. By the time summer rolled around, my name was being passed around not as the cold older sister, but as a respected professional with a reputation for results. Community recognition followed. A local paper ran a feature on women in tech, and my photo made the front page of the lifestyle section. An old high school teacher emailed me to say she'd clipped it out and pinned it to her bulletin board. And through it all, I kept my silence about Madison. I never gloated, never corrected the record with relatives directly. I didn't have to. The contrast between us spoke louder than anything I could have said. She was unraveling. I was thriving. The final fracture came when Madison went crawling back to my parents. I wasn't there, but word got to me through an aunt who relished delivering updates like contraband. Madison had shown up on their porch with a duffel bag begging for money. For the first time in her life, my father told her no. Mom, too. They looked tired, my aunt whispered over the phone, like they finally realized what she was. She stormed out crying, but they didn't chase her. I imagined the scene, Madison in her faded clothes, voice raised, demanding the help she'd always assumed was hers by birthright. And my parents sitting there staring at her with the truth laid bare in front of them. The golden child stripped of her shine. Still, I didn't celebrate. That wasn't what this had ever been about. It wasn't revenge for the sake of cruelty. It was survival. Weeks passed, and life settled into something resembling normal. My business grew steadily. My calendar filled with opportunities that excited me instead of draining me. I went out more, reconnected with old friends I'd neglected during the chaos. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying the weight of someone else's mistakes. Then one afternoon, everything paused. I was walking out of a coffee shop downtown, balancing a latte in one hand and my laptop bag in the other, when I spotted her. Madison. She was across the street leaning against a bus stop pole. Her hair hung limp, greasy. The hoodie she wore was wrinkled, the sleeves frayed. Her jeans sagged like they hadn't been washed in days. She clutched her phone with both hands, staring down at it as though willing anyone to call her. For the first time in my life, she looked small. Not the dramatic, loud sister who could turn a room with her antics. Just a broken figure blending into the noise of the city. As if sensing me, her eyes flicked up. For a fraction of a second, our gazes locked. She didn't smirk this time. She didn't sneer or gloat or play the victim. She just looked at me, tired, hollow, defeated. And then she looked away, shoving her phone back into her pocket, crossing her arms over her chest like a shield. I stood there on the sidewalk, coffee cooling in my hand, watching her shrink into herself. There was no satisfaction in it, no surge of victory, just a quiet, unshakable knowledge. Madison had built her life on lies and manipulation. I had built mine on resilience and hard work, and now at last the scales had balanced. I turned away and kept walking, but her face lingered in my mind long after, a haunting reminder that sometimes the most devastating punishment isn't destruction. It's being forced to live with the wreckage you created yourself. After Madison's fall, life grew strangely quiet. The constant buzzing of drama that had once defined every family interaction dulled to a faint hum. My parents still reached out now and then, short texts on birthdays, a quick call on holidays, but the tone had shifted. Gone were the long-winded lectures about helping family or the guilt trips about being the bigger person. Instead, our conversations became polite, almost formal, like talking to distant relatives. At first, that distance unsettled me. I'd spent years fighting for scraps of recognition, aching for them to see me for who I was. But as the silence stretched on, I realized it was a gift. No more battles. No more demands that I carry Madison's weight. For once, I was free to exist without constantly defending my own boundaries. As for Madison, she seemed to vanish. At first, there were whispers, rumors passed along by an aunt who couldn't resist a bit of gossip. Madison was couch surfing with friends, then crashing with a boyfriend, then back at my parents' doorstep begging for another chance. Each story was shorter, less dramatic, until finally there were no updates at all. Her absence spoke louder than her presence ever had. She'd burned through every safety net, every excuse, every ounce of goodwill. The girl who once strutted through life with shiny new gadgets and her parents' endless approval had been reduced to silence. And not the strategic kind I'd learned to wield. This was the silence of irrelevance. Every so often I'd catch a flicker of her name in passing, someone mentioning they thought they'd seen her working at a diner, or that she'd been spotted walking alone down Main Street. But there was never confirmation, never a story that lasted long enough to take root. Madison had become a ghost in her own community, fading out of the narrative she once dominated. And me? I thrived. My career blossomed in ways I hadn't dared dream of. The overseas contract turned into a full-time consulting relationship, one that had me traveling to Europe twice in a single year. I was invited to keynote a cybersecurity conference, standing on stage in front of hundreds of professionals who applauded my work. A local university asked me to guest lecture for their computer science students. My name became one associated not with family gossip, but with expertise, reliability, and success. But beyond the accolades and contracts, what mattered most was the peace. I came home at night to an apartment that hummed with quiet instead of tension. I poured my energy into friendships I'd once neglected, finding joy in simple dinners and laughter that wasn't laced with obligation. I learned how to sit still without waiting for the next family storm to crash into me. There were moments when I thought of Madison. When I passed someone in a hoodie slouched at a bus stop, or when I scrolled past an old photo of us as kids smiling in matching dresses. Sometimes I wondered if things could have been different, if she'd made other choices, if my parents had drawn lines instead of erasing them for her. But those thoughts never lingered long. Because the truth was, Madison's downfall wasn't mine to control. She had written her own story, one reckless decision at a time. The most powerful revenge, I realized, wasn't about destroying her. It wasn't about crushing her the way she'd tried to crush me. It was about refusing to be dragged down into her chaos, about letting her unravel under the weight of her own choices while I rose above them. That realization changed something in me. For years, I'd carried resentment like a stone in my chest. Resentment at my parents for enabling her, at Madison for taking and taking until there was nothing left, at myself for always craving their approval. But when the dust settled, I felt lighter. I no longer needed them to see me clearly. I saw myself clearly enough. I had survived their neglect, Madison's cruelty, and the betrayal of a family that chose convenience over truth. And not only had I survived, I had built a life so strong, so steady, that their chaos couldn't touch it anymore. The irony was that Madison's attempt to break me had done the opposite. She'd forced me to fortify every corner of my life, my finances, my career, my relationships. And in doing so, she'd given me the very thing she could never have: resilience. Now when I look ahead, I don't see her shadow stretching over me anymore. I see opportunity, freedom, and the kind of quiet dignity that comes from knowing you don't owe anyone an explanation. One evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the sunset bleed across the sky, I thought back to the night she destroyed my laptop. I could still hear the splash, see her smirk, feel the raw fury boiling in my chest. But now the memory didn't sting. It almost made me laugh. Because that moment, the one she thought would ruin me, had been the start of everything. Sometimes the best revenge isn't fire. It's silence, and watching the flames someone else lit consume them. And with that, Emily's chapter closed, not with fireworks or shouting, but with the quiet strength of someone who chose freedom over chaos. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more tales of betrayal, revenge, and redemption. Share your thoughts below. We read every comment, and your perspective matters. Thank you for listening. This has been a story from Revenge Served Cold. We'll see you next time.